Okay, guys, I read your comments and I checked out a few of these MMA picking guides that you sent me, and a lot of cool stuff. So let's take a look at what their predictions are. Now, to just start off, this is my own game. Some of these people are picking every single fight of every single UFC card, and some people are just picking the main events of the pay per views. My personal game is you pick the main event of every single UFC fight night because there should be the most information on those main events. And we're just going to see what your correct pick percentage is. And then also, just to try to normalize it for the odds, I also factored in the odds to see how well you'd be doing if you bet a single unit on each of these main events in the way that these people predicted. So, for example, this DFS by the numbers. Let's go through their picks. He picks Ankalaev, he picked Duplessis, he picked Imavov. Then he incorrectly picked Pfeiffer, Volkanovski, and Moreno. He got Rosenstrike, O'Malley, missed Tuivasa, got Rose Namajunas beating Amanda Hibis, got Manan Farrow beating Blanchfield. Then he lost Curtis Hill and Nicolau. Then he picked Pantoja to beat Urseg, Lewis to beat Nascimento, Barboza was wrong. He picked Islam to beat Poirier, and he picked Cannonier to beat Imavov, which was wrong. Then he got the last four fights correct. And again, these are just the main events of every UFC fight night. There have been 23 UFC main events so far in 2024. If we take a look at what his win rate is, he has 9 missed fights, 14 correct main events, and that turns out to be a 60% win percentage, which is pretty good. If he was to bet a single unit on every single main event, you'd be down about 0.77 units. So if you're betting in $100 units, you'd be down $77. This isn't meant to be gambling advice because if a real gambler might say that, oh, I'm not super certain on this fight, it's close, I'm just not going to bet on it, or I'm very confident in this fight, I'm going to bet like 2 or 3 units on it. So again, this isn't an accurate depiction of what their gambling advice is. This is more just to weigh if they can get the close fights correctly. And so if you can pick an underdog, this is going to go more in your favor, obviously. And if you can pick really close fights, this is going to also go in your favor because almost everyone picked Islam to beat Poirier, but not a lot of people correctly picked Imavov to beat Cannonier. So that's the DFS. I also measured this for pay-per-views only because there are a lot of big name analysts in quotation marks like Adesanya, Volkanovski, Michael Bisping that only pick pay-per-views, and even the Weasel only picks pay-per-views. So I also have these measured out for pay-per-views, and for the pay-per-views, DFS is doing a lot better. The pay-per-views have been pretty easy to predict so far this year. So DFS has a 71% win rate compared to almost a 61% win rate. So over a 10% increase in his predictions, and he's up 0.65. So pretty good. Also, we have the fortune teller. I'm not going to go through everyone's picks, but he has about a 61% win rate. So again, he's 9-14, or in terms of fight stats, he'd be 14-9, 14 hits, 9 misses, and he's about down $74. If we compare that to DFS, he's down pretty much the exact same. If we look at his pay-per-views, again, he's doing much better. Joe Pfeiffer, I just wanted to throw this in here because he picked Prohaska to beat Pereira, which was hilarious. We can ignore his stats. He's kind of just a meme. And I also threw Anthony Smith because he picked Poirier to beat Islam, which was also hilarious. So Anthony Smith and Joe Pfeiffer, I didn't even bother going through their picks. I know they're not very good analysts. Volkanovski, amazing analyst. I do want to look at some of the more like cerebral fighters, maybe Cejudo. I don't know if he does predictions or anything like that, but Volkanovski doing great. So he picks almost only pay-per-views, but he did pick Ankalaev to beat Walker. And he also looked at the fight night of Whitaker versus Alaskarov, and he picked Whitaker. So he's doing 6-2, which is great. 75% win rate, and you'd be up about 1.5 units if you bet on everything. And on the pay-per-views, he's actually doing a little bit worse just because he always picks the Australians, and obviously he picked himself to beat Topuria, but still doing really good compared to these guys who pick all of these fights. So Volkanovski, a really smart guy, and it shows through his analysis. Let's take a look at Adesanya through his channel Freestyle Bender. Again, he only goes for pay-per-views, but he did predict Robert Whitaker, so his stats for the non-pay-per-view only is going to be better than the other ones. Adesanya is friends with O'Malley and Marlon Vera, so he didn't actually make a prediction for that pay-per-view. But let's just take a look at his win rate, 50%, minus 1.41. He's not a very good analyst. I think Adesanya is actually kind of a stupid guy. We'll go over myself now. So I'm doing 6 missed fights, 17 correct fights. That's a 73.9% win rate. Let's just take a look at the ones that I missed. So Moreno versus Royval. I think there's a big argument to make that Moreno beat Royval. Rosenstrike versus Gaziev. I picked Gaziev. That's on me. Gaziev was clearly not technically as strong as Rosenstrike, and I kind of just picked against Rosenstrike in that fight because I don't like his fighting style, when honestly, looking objectively at it, Rosenstrike should have beaten him, and he did. Tuivasa versus Tybura. I think that's also on me. I should have known that Tuivasa did not have the technical skills to beat Tybura, and he just wasn't really working on his ground game at all. Tybura has the ground game, and honestly, Tuivasa is the perfect candidate for a guy like Tybura to beat. It just goes to that like Greg Hardy type style where they just gas out and get stuck on the ground. Nicolau versus Perez. Honestly, if they were to have a rematch, I think I would pick Nicolau to beat Perez again. That's just one of these fights where Perez wasn't even doing that great, and he rocked Nicolau with a big punch and finished him. So good on Perez. I can't even argue against that. But just stylistically, I would still pick Nicolau. Barboza versus Murphy and Cannonier versus Mavov is interesting because I think that these two fights that I picked incorrectly, are great examples of how aging affects fighters. Barboza and Cannonier were both slowing down to a great extent in their fights. Now, there is an argument to say that Cannonier got cheated out of his win versus Mavov. He clearly won the first round. I believe he got TKO'd in the 4th round, and he was losing rounds 2 and 3, in my opinion. That was a really close fight. That was a super tough prediction to make. And kind of the same with Barboza versus Murphy. I still maintain that Barboza has a great style to beat Murphy, but just the age of Barboza and the wear and tear on his body made him really slow down. And I think you can say the same with Cannonier. Cannonier was slowing down, and he just wasn't really able to take a punch like I was expecting him to be able to. So we have some learning lessons here. A lot of these losses are due to a lack of skill or just getting up there in age. But overall, I'm very happy with my body of work so far this year. And I think that I've been doing a great job of analyzing these fights. Every fight that I miss, you should try to learn why you missed that. And I think I'm doing pretty good. 74% win. You're up you're up over 6 units if you've been betting on what I've been doing. Let's take a look at the pay-per-views. Literally haven't missed a single pay-per-view so far this year. And just because there haven't been as many fights, you're down a little bit of units compared to my overall unit wins, but 100% win rate on pay-per-views. Let's take a look at GC from MMA Hour. Here he is. He doesn't really pick the main events. He does a lot of prop bets on them. So it's kind of hard parsing out his picks, but he picked Dolidze to win. He picked Pfeiffer to win. He picked Blanchfield to win. He picked Pereira to win, which actually he did win. He picked Murphy to win. He picked Poirier to win. A lot of these picks are meme picks. He picked Amavov. That worked. Tyro worked. Whitaker worked. Prochazka. He picked him in like their UFC 303 parlay that they did. He got knocked out, and he did bet on Namajunas. So his win rate is 54%. I don't think he's really trying to analyze these fights, so it's not super fair to him. And you'd be losing just over a unit. If we take a look at the pay-per-views, he's only bet on a few, so 33% chance. 33% success rate. Let's take a look at the Weasel. So Weasel picked Ankalaev. That's great. Picked Strickland in a very close fight. Very close pay-per-view. Lost there. Volkanovski he picked and lost. Moreno he picked and lost. Then he picks O'Malley, who wins. Pereira knocks out Hill. Weasel did pick Urseg, who ended up losing. Islam beat Poirier. Whitaker beat Aliskerov. And Pereira beat Prochazka. So Weasel's doing a respectable 60%, and he's still down almost 1.2 units. If we take a look at his pay-per-view, win rate's pretty similar, 57%, and down a little bit less. Guru, MMA Guru has actually picked every single main event. He does the full card breakdown, so great work doing that. But he's not actually that good of an analyst. He's pretty much at a 50-50, 11 misses, 12 hits, 52% success rate, down almost 4 units. If we took a look at the pay-per-views, he's doing much better, 71%, and up 1.24 units. And I think the pay-per-views have been pretty easy to predict so far this year. Brian Petri from the Anik and Florian podcast, he is a professional gambler. And, as a professional gambler he's asked to make a prediction for all of the main events. You should expect him to have pretty good picks, but he doesn't. He's not a very good analyst. He is hitting at below the 50% mark right now with 13 misses and 10 hits. You're down almost 6.75 units, so not great. If we take a look at the pay-per-views, again, much better. He's hitting at a 71% and a 40. You'd be at up almost half a unit, so almost breaking even. Bisping, I need to go through his podcast. Maybe he breaks down some of these main events in his podcast, but on his YouTube channel, he pretty much just breaks down the pay-per-views, and just with that, he's at 50%. You're down almost 2 units. Just pay-per-views, he's even worse, 40%, down almost 2 units again. This is MMA Lock of the Night, who does another full card breakdown. Decent, nothing. He doesn't really stand out at all. 9 misses, 14 hits, 60%. And up 2 units. So actually pretty good on the amount of units. But on the pay-per-views, he's actually been kind of missing. 57% down a little bit over a unit. Kenny Florian doing great. Another genuinely good analyst. So some of the most fun outcomes of this little project that I've been doing is seeing what minds there are out there that are actually good at breaking down fights. And I think that this guy, DFS, is doing really good, even though he's pretty much exactly tied with Fortune Teller. Kenny Florian and Volkanovski are the most entrenched in the sport who are genuinely good analysts. Dan Hardy's, in terms of making picks, he's not a good analyst. But yeah, Florian, amazing job, really, really good, 68%. He had this big block of misses, but then just some huge successful, and I wasn't able to find his Lewis versus Nascimento pick, but I'm sure he would have picked Lewis. And then Cannonier and Perez, those are kind of hard picks to come by. His pay-per-view doing even better. He's only missed 85% success rate, up 2.36 units on the pay-per-views, and that brings us to our totals. So I'm going to be adding to this just in terms of scale of detail, so adding more fights for Bisping, Joe Pyfer, Anthony Smith, but also let me know some more guys that you want to see added into this. Let's just go over these tables really quick. So this is just Analyst. This is your win rate. So overall, Anthony Smith and Joe Pfeiffer, I only put in their one miss, so they're at a 0% win rate. But Brian Petri doing the worst at 43%, which is really bad considering that he's picked every single main event. It's not like he's just been picking the pay-per-views or like not really caring, or doing meme bets like GC where he's gonna wear Dustin Poirier's war hat and throw a unit down on Dustin Poirier. He's actually seriously trying to predict all of these fights, so he's doing really bad. Wouldn't pay attention to his bets. I really would not pay attention to anything he says. Then Bisping, I feel like a lot of people don't really consider Bisping's analysis to be too serious. Guru, I think that Guru's analysis is fine. He's an entertaining talker, but in terms of just making picks, when it comes down to it, where you have to decide A or B, he's not the guy you should go to. GC, not super good in breaking down fights. I don't know how well he's doing in terms of like his betting. Maybe if you follow his bets, you could make some money off of it, but in terms of pure analysis, not very good. I don't think he's great at breaking down the fights, just in terms of talking about them, and he's definitely not good at making picks. Adesanya, he's doing fine. Like people that are just doing the pay-per-views are doing fine. Weasel, doing fine. He's a good analyst. Fortune teller, good, 60, almost 61%, and he has the same rate as DFS and Lock of the Night. Kenny Florian, doing great. Myself, also doing great. Volkanovski, doing amazing. So, don't want to pat myself on the back, but this cohort of people, myself, Volkanovski, and Florian, are almost 10 points, well, over 10 points. I would say we're significantly higher than everyone else on this list if you compare it to Adesanya, Weasel, Fortune Teller, DFS, and Lock of the Night. They're all at about the 60% range. Then if we look at the pay-per-views only, which would bring a more accurate picture for guys like Bisping and Adesanya, everyone's rate goes up a little bit, except Bisping's, which actually goes down. And I guess Adesanya's goes down too, but everyone's doing, wait a second, and actually Lock of the Night goes down. Okay, so not everyone's has gone down, but I'm hitting 100% on my pay-per-views. Kenny Florian doing great at 85%. Volkanovski, 71%, tying with a bunch of other guys. So Volkanovski still stays in the top 3. And then this is just talking about the picks that are adjusted for the odds. And again, this isn't gambling advice. This isn't who's the best gambler, but it does serve to just weigh your picks based off of how big of a favorite they are or how close it is. So if you pick Ankalaev, that's going to give you less weight than if you had picked Nasruddin Imavov correctly. And in this one, I'm doing the best at 6.14. I've picked a couple of good underdogs, and I've just missed the least. So getting that, like losing that unit, really helps you out here. Kenny Florian doing the second best. Lock of the Night doing very good at 2.07. And Volkanovski, the only other guy that's made money so far this year. Everyone else has lost money. And if we look at the pay-per-views only for the total units, I'm still number 1. Then you have Kenny Florian, who's doing great. Lock of the Night drops down to -1 unit. And we actually have a few guys making money. So Brian Petri would be making money if his pay-per-view only. And yeah, a lot more guys. So this is just kind of shows you that the pay-per-views have been easier to predict this year than the rest of the main cards or the rest of the main events. And then just to wrap it up, some graphs. So this is just in order of how many units you win. And this is just retelling the data that I just went over. And then this is the win rate. So god damn you, Volkanovski. Volkanovski's beating me in terms of the win percentage. I wanted to be top at all of these, but I had to hand it to Volkanovski. He's doing really good. Let's take a look at Volkanovski's picks and Kenny Florian's picks. So Volkanovski, he picks Ankalaev. That really kind of picking such a lock really kind of buffed up his win percentage because it was easy. It doesn't pick anyone else. He picks himself for obvious reasons. He picks Urseg because he's Australian, and then he picked Whitaker. I thought he was going to do a breakdown for this Moreno versus Royval card because it was kind of a popular card in terms of how much it was getting promoted, but he didn't. I think he was not really wanting to do a breakdown the week after he got knocked out, which I can't even blame him. And let's take a look at Kenny Florian's picks, since he's actually done a pick for everyone. So he picks Ankalaev, Duplessis. That was big, picking Duplessis because he was such a close fight against Strickland in terms of the odds. Misses all of these. He picks Volkanovski to win, Moreno to win, Gaziev to win, which I can't even blame. I did all of that. Picking Delize to beat Imavov, not very smart. Pfeiffer, everyone was picking Pfeiffer, but in hindsight, I think like Pfeiffer's not very good. And I mean, I obviously thought that when I made the pick against him. O'Malley, picking Tybura to beat Tuivasa, great pick there. Picking Ferro to beat Blanchfield. Surprisingly, a lot of people were picking Blanchfield to beat Ferro. I think one analysis that I want to do for this is talking about who was missed the most, or what fighter was surprised the most people. What else kind of surprised me with this picks? Murphy beating Barboza was great. He stuck on Pantoja to beat Urseg. That was very clutch. Picking Perez to beat Nicolau. Yeah, so he just has had very good picks. Not really letting the odds sway him at all. And I think that Kenny Florian is one of the best analysts on YouTube right now. I think him and Volkanovski. Well, that's all I really have to say. I might make another video about this. Maybe breaking people's picks down, but it's going to be a lot of clips, so maybe I can make it into a little race type thing where you can see them making their picks in real time and how that affects their standings amongst everyone else. But let me know if you want me to kind of measure other people's pay-per-view picks. Maybe Brendan Schaub, he probably does pay-per-view only. Maybe he does UFC main events. I don't know. But yeah, it's been fun. I want to say thanks for supporting the channel. This has been a lot of fun, making picks, cutting up videos, making reactions from other people. And I would actually really love to collaborate with some people here. Obviously, fighters would be great to collaborate with. I think Kenny Florian would be really fun to talk to. I mean, Volkanovski, of course, but that's a little out of my league. The DFS seems like a really cool guy. He does a lot of good work. I respect a lot of his analysis. Lock of the night, yeah, it'd be cool to talk to him. It'd be fun to talk to like some idiots like Joe Pfeiffer. I really don't respect him at all. And I think the Weasel, great YouTuber, would love to work with him. I think it would be fun to kind of do some collaborative like round table thing where everyone gets together, brings some content, and makes a big video for the big events. So like maybe for the London pay-per-view, UFC 304 or UFC 305, everyone comes in with picks. We can have arguments about it. We can talk about underdogs, favorites, locks. That'd be really fun. Anyway, guys, I'm the best analyst on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.